Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys. Okay, before we dive into today's episode, I just want to tell you a little bit about my guest. As you'll see when you watch and listen to the episode, you'll see how just excited and giddy I am because I just adore my guest today, David Bedrick. And what we're talking about, and you'll see this, today's episode is called The Unshaming Way with David Bedrick, and this is his latest book. The Unshaming Way, a compassionate guide to dismantling shame. And the subtitle is Heal from Trauma, Unlearn Self-Blame, and Reclaim Your Story. And David is such a brilliant human being. I consider him one of my teachers, one of my mentors, somebody who I consider like an elder. I don't know how much older than me he is, but he is still seems to me like a wise elder who I really love the way that he holds space in the world, the way that he teaches, the way that he speaks, the way that his mind works. There's so much about him that I love. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about his official bio, and then you can see him in action in the interview. So make sure you stick around. So David is a teacher, a counselor, and an attorney. And as you'll see and hear in our interview, that he grew up in a family that was marked by violence. And so professionally, he was on the faculty of the University of Phoenix and the Process Work Institute in the US and in Poland. He's also the founder of the Sante Fe Institute for Shame-Based Studies. And it's there that he trains therapists and he trains coaches and he trains healers. And he also offers workshops for individuals to further their own personal development. He's a writer for Psychology Today. He's written 4 books. He's an author of 4 fantastic books. One is called Talking Back to Dr. Phil, Alternatives to Mainstream Psychology. His other book is called Revisioning Activism, Bringing Depth, Dialogue, and Diversity to Individual and Social Change. And then his third book was You Can't Judge a Body by Its Cover. And it's 17 women's stories of hunger, body shame, and redemption. David is such a lovely human being. He's funny, he's smart, he's sensitive. He's unlike anybody else that I have ever known, studied with, trained with, learned from. And I just wanted to share him with all of you. If you're a longtime listener of the show, you know that when I have people in the world that I have interacted with, and I adore them, I love them, or I'm wicked curious about them, or I just want to do a love shout out and have more people know them in their work because I think it will be beneficial and transformative and powerful, then I'd like to invite them on the show. I think you too are going to fall in love with David. So give the show a listen or a watch. I would love to hear from you afterwards what your favorite takeaways are. And I just hope you really enjoy it, benefit from it in some way. And like I said, I think you're going to love him the same way that I do. Okay, bye. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I am so super duper excited. Like, you guys have no idea. David and I have been talking about this for a long time. I've been trying to get him on the show, and now is the perfect time because, as I said, he is the author of 4 books. And what we're going to be talking about today, amongst many other things, is his new book, The Unshaming Way. You can see I've been diving deep into this sucker. And I have so many thoughts, and I just adore David. As I said in the intro, he is one of my teachers. He is somebody that I consider like a long distance mentor. And I just love so many things about David, but I think one of the things that I really adore about you, so just receive this, is you kind of, whenever you're teaching or leading something that I've been involved in. So I did like a 6-week course with you, and then I've taken a bunch of other trainings and things that you've done all around shame and the unshaming process and all this stuff. But you have this beautiful way about you where you tend to like go first. And what I mean by that is you really model vulnerability and transparency and a kind of innocence that I really love. And I was just kind of telling you how I wore my unicorn sweater just because I was talking to you, and the little kid in me feels safe in your presence. So I love that. And like, even there are times when we'll be on a call or something, and before you start, you'll start to voice out loud what's happening within you. And so you're already kind of showing us, I don't even know if you do it intentionally, but you're already kind of showing us an unshaming way with yourself that just allows my whole nervous system to just kind of start to calm down because I'm
Mm.
seeing somebody voice out loud what I think a lot of us feel in new situations or when even if
Mm.
we love to lead and teach, you have that moment where you're like, oh my God, the attention's on me and your nervous system gets a little scared. And you do these little things where you'll say, okay, like, how am I feeling? And you talk out loud. And it's just something I love about you. So I wanted to say that. I have plenty of more things to say. But first of all,
Mm.
just welcome to the show, David Bedrick.
Thank you. Thank you. If people are seeing me, they're seeing this is not a message to anybody. Well, it was a message to me. A garage door and my finger had a conflict.
Yeah.
The garage door didn't seem to be impacted by my side of the conflict.
Oh
It,
my
but it
God.
made a pretty good impression on me.
Well, yeah, so just thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And I want to talk about a lot of different things, but do you have anything to say about that process that you do or that thing that you do where you're when you talk out loud about that? What do you what do you call that? Or is that just something you do to make yourself feel better? Can you tell us a little about that?
It's a process of arriving. It's something nobody's ever asked me about that. That's really touching, Karen. I notice I'm shy to talk about it because I've ne not that I'm unwilling to, and just that no one's ever asked me about it. It's part of a spiritual practice and discipline of mine, and that practice is about what people might call arriving in the moment.
Mm,
And for me, arriving means I'm connected to other things. I call that the spirit or the earth, but that means something else is here. And if I'm in a more intimate communion with that, then I trust the flow of what's about to happen more than my skills or my preparation. I'm never confident about my own skills and preparation, not because they're not good. It's just I don't get confidence from my abilities, but I get confidence from feeling like I'm connected to something that is part of the flow. That I have total more than confidence in. Yeah.
David, you are speaking my language. I know a lot about you. I don't know what you know about me, but I am a spiritual mentor. That is what I do in my day-to-day life.
Mm.
And so my whole show is about spirituality and storytelling and kind of
Mm.
bringing the humanity kind of into that deeper connection to whatever you happen to call it, whether it's God,
Mm.
source, love, spirit, universe. So I too have my own little um, call them rituals or just things that I do as well before I land to talk to somebody. So thank you so much for sharing that. I love that you just shared that. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the other things too is that I don't have a lot of guests on my show. So I really am, I don't mean necessarily picky, but there it has to be somebody that I either love, I adore, I'm wicked curious about, or I think they're doing really good work in the world and I want to tell more people about them. And so when I do have people on my show, though, they're usually people who are pretty either well accomplished or they're doing cool things. And when we read a bio at the beginning of an episode, right, people get to hear all about who you are now as an adult and what you've accomplished and the work that you do. And we will get there.
Mm.
But what I love to ask people is a series of questions that are kind of like this, like, what were you like as a little kid?
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
what was your childhood like? And do you feel like your childhood informs or influences or inspires the work that you do now? Is there a connective thread there somehow?
Definitely. Definitely. My childhood. Well, it's a different things to say that are important to my story. One, the abuse and trauma story. I grew up in a Jewish home with a father who was post-Holocaust. That's important because he had a lot of shit that he didn't know what to do with.
Mm,
Did do something with it. He used his fists and belts to express his rage, which means he was violent, abusive, traumatizing. Those words are appropriate. Scary. So my childhood meant mostly being frightened almost all the time because it was a scary place to live.
yeah.
Uh, and then I had a mother who was disempowered, and that meant specifically she was in vast denial about that violence, even when it happened right in front of her. It wasn't like what happened. She would see it, um, and but sort of had to say, "I don't know what's happening, David. Why are you upset about things?" and things like that. So I internalized the violence, meaning I could sometimes treat myself the way my father did, hurt myself, criticize myself in a like a thrashing belt, only it's not a literal belt. And then I internalized my mother, which means I can be in denial about what I'm going through and my own suffering and my own hurt.
Mm.
Um, and for many years, I would have said I was really shy as a kid. This is really interesting in terms of shame because I wasn't shy as a kid. I was scared.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
say that kid, that's a shy kid, you think, oh, so what? So he should go slow or learn to overcome some of that shyness. But shyness is like a personality. Being scared is not a personality. Being scared is an environment, right? I wasn't shy. I was just frightened. If I'm not frightened, I'm actually quite talkative, quite open to playing. Um, and then I had certain gifts. I was precocious in certain ways and poetic in certain ways. And um, and I saw what was happening in my family very, very young. So something in me, you could call that a like a wounded healer. Something in me said, I know what's going on. I'll help the whole family. Not that I was only able to or should have had that job as a child, but some children have a gift, a healing gift, and then the gift starts to emerge in a sick system. And then people say, that's bad. You shouldn't have had to be that role as a child, which is true. But that shouldn't dismiss the fact that that person has a healing gift and needs to learn to use it. Yeah, that's a
Oh,
lot to say. Yeah.
it's no, it's the perfect amount to say. And I still think that you're precocious and poetic.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
nature. That's my nature. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. And I've heard, I've heard parts of your story before, and I want to come back to what you kind of talked about your mother because I want to come back to that idea of a witness and how important that is.
Yeah.
And, for folks who, don't really know your work, like one of the things that you mentioned was shame. And I think it's so fascinating what you just said because I relate to you in like so many ways. I too, I would tell the story that I was wicked shy as a kid. But it's come to my attention, and partially through the work that I've done with you or learning from you, is that like you, like I've been a student. I don't know if you know what A Course in Miracles is, but I've been a
Yeah. A
student
little
of,
bit. Mhm.
yeah, I've been a student of Course in Miracles for like 30 years. And one of the main tenets is that, right, we have these ideas of like love and fear. And I said, only a kid, like I'm like one of the reasons why I was so fascinated by this is this concept of like a thought system of love versus a thought system of fear. And fear has been a really big thing in my life. And I realized like I was terrified most of my fucking childhood. I'm like, that's what it was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know so much that I was, like you said, I was shy in some ways, but I was really afraid to use my voice because when you spoke up, like you got in trouble, you know what I mean? So thank you for even saying that out loud because I know somebody out there is listening to this and they just had
Yeah.
a moment of enlightenment and awareness perhaps about themselves. So just thank
People
you.
come to conclusions about themselves which are invariably wrong. I'm not meaning to criticize people, meaning we come to the conclusion of those who told us how we were like. Oh, he's a shy kid. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's not good at math. Or I used to teach a statistics class in university
Yeah.
for social science people. And all the students would come in saying, I'm not good at math. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at math. And you know what the truth is? Most of them had lousy math teachers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
Like
do.
they were unfeeling. They didn't know how to teach math as a feeling issue, which it is. And I can talk about that, but and connect math to the intimacy and the experiences of their lives. So they made it a cold thing, and people were like disconnected from it. So then people walk around thinking, I'm just not good at something. They're just not good at learning the way a system taught it.
Oh my God. Isn't
But
that
they have a
so?
conclusion about themselves. I'm this way, I'm that way, I'm that this kind of person, I'm a shy person, I'm a this kind of person, and invariably it's not true.
Oh my
Mhm.
God, David, I so agree with you. I'm a writer and I'm also a gateless writing instructor. And in gateless, the methodology of gateless, the approach really is that when we write and then when we give feedback, we only speak to what like we loved about the piece, what was strong about the piece, what
That's right.
stayed with us, right? And because the inner critic can get really loud. But as a teacher and as a writer, when I have so many people who have come to my yoga and writing classes or my whatever, my gateless salon, and they've said like that they're not writers or they're not good or they're terrified to speak because of that teacher in fourth grade with the red pen who
Mhm.
told them something about themselves and that they then made it like gospel truth, you know what I mean? And so
Yes, I do know.
it's so true that sometimes it's not the kids at all. It's that the teachers either don't know how to um, deal or teach somebody who maybe needs something different. So that's a really wonderful thing. And I wanna come back to this because I think what we're talking about too is a lot of people can feel um, like shamed out of their gifts in a way. Like they don't think that it's available to them or that wouldn't even occur to them that they had a gift or something. And
That's right.
before we get into that, will you just share a little bit like what is shame? And I have a bunch of quotes just from things you've said over time that I've written down. Um, and you said one time, shame isn't a feeling. Shame is a viewpoint. It's a way of looking at ourselves. And I would love if you would share a little bit like what you consider shame and how you would define it.
Yeah, that's really an important thing because if you read literature or listen to stories about shame, people tell stories about an agonizing feeling experience. I came to the podcast and I didn't realize, I don't know, that my pants were ripped. And on
Right.
you pointed it out on the podcast, and there I have a big hole and whatever. And people are seeing aspects of my body, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what? And I want to hide, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's this humiliating, painful experience. Very little bit of shame is like that.
Hmm.
The stories people tell to explain it, and then we're going to go, oh yeah, I've had painful experiences. Most shame is totally unconscious, not known, and not seen. Like you could be ashamed of your beauty and not know it. You could just think, I'm really not very attractive. You don't have any negative feeling. Or you could be uh, I'm just thinking of examples I'm not sure that I'm hesitating to say, but you could be changing your skin color and think I look much better this way, lightening my skin. There are countries where 50 to 60% of the people lighten their skin.
Wow.
And that person looks in the mirror and is not feeling pain. They're feeling more beautiful. Where's the shame? The shame says, you as who you are not beautiful. Something is wrong with you and it should be fixed. Okay, caveat. If you want to change your skin color, that's you're free to do that. And I don't think that person should or shouldn't do that. But I'm saying the culture that's like that. So shame is a viewpoint and it looks at who you are and says something is wrong with you that needs to be changed, fixed, or healed. That almost always happens as soon as you're bothered by something about yourself. So I wake up a lot at night and I don't sleep enough hours. I would like to sleep more. It would be good for me. I would enjoy it.
Hmm.
But I wake up at night and then I think, what should I do? Chamomile tea, exercise more, take in Ambien. Maybe I should do acupuncture. Not don't have coffee during the day. Maybe, etc. And other people, if I wrote on social media, would give me a whole host of examples. And
Yes.
here's what people will never ask, almost never. What's it like when you wake up at night? What do you feel like? What's it like in your body and experience? Are you nervous? Are you happy everybody's quiet? Is the moon out and glowing and is it beautiful? Do you read poems and you don't read them during the day? How come? Are you playing for the first time? Are you scrolling the internet because you weren't allowed to get too much work to do? No. The obvious question, what are you actually doing, is left out. Instead, I call that pathologizing. Something's wrong. It's a sickness. That's what I mean by pathologizing. Let's correct it. So there's no inquiry into what I am, what I'm doing. Is there any, I call it intelligence. Is my system moved by something? I don't like being tired, but I love being up in the middle of the night. I can tell you, It's quiet. And here's the secret to my up at night. I'm not responsible to or for anything. Ooh, that's pretty lovely. You mean you could just, nobody's there. You could do anything you want. You can't get caught because everybody's, so to speak. Okay, live more like that during the day. That would be great. But still, my psyche says, I'm going to find a little hole in the world where I can do and be and feel, like explore my inner world. I could feel the terrors that I'm not allowed to feel during the day. There's a certain beauty to that. But we pathologize that. And everybody, we live in a allopathic system almost everywhere. That means, what bothers you? Well, I'm fat. Okay, here's what to do. Well, I'm depressed. Okay, here's what to do. Well, I'm anxious. Okay, here's what to do. Well, I have an addictive pattern. Okay, here's what to do, etc. And almost no one says, "Oh, you're an addictive pattern? What do you do?" "I drink alcohol." "How much do you drink?" "I drink 5 drinks, then I start to black out." Let's imagine you're blacking out. What happens for you? "I'm anxious." "What's it like to be anxious? Can you show me anxiousness?" "Well, I'm a fawning person from trauma." "Can you show me what it's like to fawn?" "Oh, Karen, I'll do anything you say. Oh, please like me. Please like me. Show me who you are so I can actually meet you. And then I might be able to understand what your system is, quote unquote, intelligently trying to do. And I can help you do that maybe more consciously and better. But otherwise, anyway, but then we have to get over the quick, how do I change you? Instead, I have to think, maybe you're doing something that's part of your nature that I could reveal, unfold, flower into your intelligence. That would be unshaming. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is wonderful because one of the things I was going to say was, can you please share a little bit about your unshaming process? Because you've been developing this over 30 years, and I know you had some wonderful mentors yourself, wonderful teachers too, in particular, who you often talk about that kind of saw your gifts and kind of, I think, brought that forward. But one of the things I wrote down here was, can you share how your unshaming approach or process differs from traditional therapy. But I made a couple of notes to myself, and I want to make sure I said traditionally healing sounds like we got to fix it, we got to heal it, we got to make it go away, right? We got to make it something
Mhm.
different. And then I wrote this so I wouldn't forget. I said, my experience is that your unshaming work encourages deep experiential engagement with our emotions, and it invites us to hear, feel, and express the intelligent messages from our body.
That's
And
it.
in highlighted, I wrote these 3 things. It says that these are things that you've said. I was on the calls, but to our group, you said genuine inquiry and curiosity. What's it like to be you? And then
That's
you
it.
said, I want to know what it's like before we try to get rid of it. And then you
Yeah.
said, people's experience is sacred, more than my knowledge. It's more sacred than my own knowledge. And that's really powerful. Like nobody has ever, and I think this is one of the things in why I continue to, listen whenever I get a chance, like listen to you teach or speak or whatever. I tune in because nobody before, and I mean this, you must hear this all the time. And if you don't, I would be amazed, but nobody before has ever asked that question. Normally it's like, oh, I have IBS. I've had IBS symptoms since I was 15, after, my mother was murdered when I was 12 and it was
Oh,
very,
wow.
yeah, it was very violent and all this stuff. And so grew up in Massachusetts. It's like, suck it up and stuff it down. We don't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. It was like the sun, like my mother was like the sun in my universe. She was
Oh,
like,
wow.
she was the light of my world. And so
Wow.
when she disappeared, like my whole, like where I was in the world, my whole life like blew apart. And
Wow.
nobody ever talked about it. It was literally like she disappeared overnight. So for me, a lot of what was coming up, I sucked it up and stuffed it down. That's what I talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
But at no point, all the people I've seen over the years, right, whether it was a traditional doctor, somebody trying to give me a hypnotist, not one person until I met you ever said, well, what's it like to be you? Like, tell me more. Like, what's happening inside of you? And instead of trying to fix it or make it wrong, tell me more. And that was like, that was like mind blowing to me. First of all, that I'd never heard it before, but like, this process, I know I'm saying a lot of things, but this process,
Yeah.
did
Say
it
it.
na come naturally to you? Like, did somebody did somebody ask you those questions first? Like, how did you know to ask that question that nobody else asked?
It's a great question. It was natural for me to have that kind, not just of a curiosity, but I believed it's a weird, I don't know, I was gonna say I believed in people, but it's not, but in this particular way, I believe that what people were experiencing and felt was sacred. I didn't think of it that way, but even as a young child, I thought something amazing was happening with people who were having a really difficult time. And it was not a thought, it just was like I was compelled. I had a violent brother who did awful things to me, which I won't describe because it's not necessary at the moment. I'm not afraid to, it's just not necessary. But I was fascinated by him also. I was
Mhm.
like, what is he doing?
Yes.
And again, I needed to learn to not say this is okay and stop it, all that. I'm not thinking it's good to let somebody hurt you and things like that. I'm not advocating for that. But I also was more than curious. I kind of thought I I it edged out to say it. I loved him so much that I thought he was trying to do something that he didn't know how to do any other way. Again, I'm not make don't make excuses for abuses, right? Like he should have been fucking stopped. I cut off my relationship with him because he was violent. I had huge fights with my father. I'm not saying don't try to say to
Yes.
someone, I will cut you out of my fucking life. I'm not thinking don't do that. But my something in me, whatever reason, was naturally drawn that. And then later in life, I met a teacher, Arnie Mindell, who died 4 or 5 months, 6 months ago, something like that, who treated people that way. And I thought, oh, there it is. That's the thing that I know. But he had a different way of framing that. Um, anyway, he was working with physical symptoms and physical health and asking people about their experiences and finding intelligence in that. I was blown away by that. Yeah. Anyway, so that happened. I'm thinking of a story that's not from Arnie because the stories would take too long. Um, but I worked with a woman who was had a stutter,
Mm,
right? So if she would say Karen, she would say Karen. I'm not trying to mimic her, by the way.
I
That's
understand.
not, I'm just showing what she was like. And she went to different people to try to help, speech pathologists, etc. And what did they try to do? Not unsurprisingly, calm down, learn certain methods to be more regulated so that you're not nervous and then you'll stutter a little bit or a lot less. And that helped some of the time, but
Hmm.
certain times it didn't help. And I asked her, so she thinks something's wrong with me. I have to get rid of this. If somebody can help, great. I'm not against that. But what is it? What is the stuttering thing? We don't exactly know. We just think it's an illness to be relieved. And if it got away, if it went away, she'd be better. And I said to her, let's stutter together. Like, she's like, looking at me like I'm crazy. Why? Because why would you do that? I'm like, because I don't exactly know what she's doing yet. I know it's a word called stutter. I know it breaks up words. It doesn't complete a word. I know that, but I want to know the experience. So we stuttered together. So I would say her name. Let's make up her name is Karen. So I go, Karen. She go, David, right?
Hmm.
So now we're doing it. I said, do it more. David, right, like that. So
Yeah.
she's going for it. And first of all, we're both laughing and hysterical and glowing. Why are we glowing? Everybody can have their own answer to that. But that's already magical. You mean like she's free to be her and we're enjoying her as she is? I like that world already. I like a world where you have IBS and you say, oh my gosh, I'm nauseous. I haven't shit in 3 days, but then I shit for 4 days, diarrhea. I'm like, oh wow, let me tell you about my stuff, you know? Here's my finger, I got caught in it. And we normalize the world a little bit. It's like a diversity model. Come
Yes.
to our model. So that begins to happen. But then let's examine stuttering for just a second. So if you slow down stuttering. It's like this. If I'm going to stutter with the word David, it's like David. So can you see the stopping? I can't get it out, and then it bursts.
First.
It goes and then it bursts out. So there's an energy that can't get out easily. Again, I'm not mimicking anybody, please. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to show you what's happening. It's not a theory. It's not an idea. It's the actual what's happening. And then it goes, David, and it bursts out. So she's got a big energy that wants to burst out, but can't quite get out. Something
Mm.
prevents it from coming out, and then it bursts out. So I said, let's stay with that big energy. David, David, keep on feeling that. Ruh, ruh. So put a word to that energy. And guess what word she uses? Fuck. Fuck is like a great word. You can use it for all kinds. You can do it for love, for hate, for exclamation. So she goes, fuck. I said, keep going with the word fuck with all the energy. And pretty soon she's going, fuck, fuck, fuck. No stutter. No stutter. But all that energy is out. She's not like going, maybe I shouldn't say that word. It's a bad word, but it's okay. She's like singing it out.
Free.
Sing. Why? There's something in her that's a little bit forbidden. Stop it. But when it's free, it's a big expression, a song, a strong, expressive song. Why isn't she singing that song all the time? There's something against her saying things like fuck and being as expressive as she is. So she manifests that uniquely to her because she has a certain voice issue that lets that happen. So in one way we could say relax, etc. But if we unshame and say let's do it even more, we find out there's a big energy in her, and then we can hear stories maybe like you had of I shouldn't sit at the dinner table and scream about my family violence. I shouldn't, whatever. So I have all this reason to suppression, the stopper, and a big voice. So her long-term healing is not just to stop the stuttering, which will get helped as she expresses more, but to let her be her.
Oh,
We want her to be a calm, reasonable person who doesn't stutter. We want her to have a big voice. She wanted to be a poet, by the way, and do online poetry, and there were strong expressions. So what she needs to learn is to be out there with a really big, expressive voice. For how long will she need to do that until she gets better? I don't know, 3 generations?
mm.
I'm saying it that way facetiously. As long as that process took, how long did it take for that suppression and violence to get there? More than 1 generation, I can tell you. It's a life. It's not a sickness. It's the unfolding of who she is. Will she have difficulties at times? Yes. Will she stutter at times? Probably. Will some people make it hard for her to be a stutterer because they're embarrassed or trying to fix her? Yes. That's what it looks like to be her. That's what it looks like to be an authentic person. Not everyone will like you. You'll come out more and more uniquely as you. Look more and more uniquely as you, some people will not like you. Some people will like you. Some people will hate you and want to marginalize you. Some people will fall in love with you and think you're great. That's what it looks like to start looking more like yourself. It's a real life. I, I can't get her outside of the real life without compromising the person she is. Back to the gifts she has, which has to do with expressiveness in her voice. Not everyone would do it that way. Some people would get IBS. Some people would get shy and want to be activists. Some people would become very tender. We don't know. But for her, the voice is the place where the gift is. So the voice meets the suppressive environment and goes, I have it right here. Every time I stutter, you can know I'm a person held back with a big message. Every second I talk, I'm telling you that about myself. Take 5 minutes and you'll find that out.
Oh my gosh. You have so many incredible stories. Like I can think of several off the top of my head. And
Yeah.
so much of what I'm hearing in that, it's like, how do I say this? It's almost like it's not that you're giving people permission. They don't need your permission, but you are in a way saying, be more you.
Be
Don't just
more
like
you.
be even more you. And when you were talking about stutter and voice and sound. Can you tell people a little bit about radical soma? Because it's a part of your, if you're comfortable sharing, because I know it's also, you talk about the
Totally.
book, but it's something you
No, that's
teach.
great.
It's like, the role of feeling and movement and sound in the soma, in the body. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's also something that I'm not going to say it's totally unique to you, but you do seem to do it in a very unique way. I have never seen anybody who guides people through being more of themselves using radical soma. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that?
Yeah, because if you said I'm scared today, or I'm angry today, or I'm depressed today, and I said be more of yourself, you might not know what that means or how to do it. It requires certain skills that not have to be graduate level skills. They can be, but they could be a skills that a child learns, but we don't because people aren't inquiring. If I'm sick with a headache, somebody doesn't say, "What's your headache like? Is it pounding? Is it sharp? Is it like a pressure? Is it on one side? Does it make you dizzy like a migraine? Like, what's this headache? Is it behind your eyes?" So because people aren't asking those questions, usually, sometimes
Hmm.
medical people, but sometimes not. They'll just say, "Here's a Tylenol. You got a headache." So they might not ask anything. So because they're not asking, they're not educating me about how to enter my experience and communicate about it. So then I walk around saying, I got a headache today. I don't say, I have like a knife in my piercing here, or I have head's like in a vice today, or my
Hmm.
sinuses are so filled up, I just got over COVID that it puts this pressure inside. So it's like this fist inside that's trying to get out of my head. And you can imagine what that's like having a skull that doesn't move. So those are descriptions that I'm not asked to make. So people need help. They need to learn those fundamental skills. And the easiest and most direct way for most people, not everybody, is to start feeling in the body. We call that soma, somatic. The soma means body. So when somebody says, I'm nervous, where is it in your body? Oh, it's in my solar plexus. What's it like in there? Is it shaking? Is it kind of butterflying? Is it pressure in there? Is it getting warm? Is something starting to move in there? May give you a little bit of acid. So we wanted to inquire about the body feeling experience. And most people talk about somatic experience, they mean feeling experience. Some people call that interoceptive, proprioceptive. It's the feeling, the sensation level feeling. Not like I'm sad. There's a heaviness and it's kind of watery and misty and it's kind of like weighing me down. You see my body go. So that's a really helpful beginning. But it's usually not enough because feelings don't want to only be felt, they want to be expressed. If I'm angry with you, I don't want to kind of go, okay, I'm going inside. I want to actually show you some of my anger within the context of the relationship and safety. I want to be able to express that in the world through my stuttering poetry, through my telling you back off or this is the boundary, or my telling you you're great, I love you. I want to express those feelings. So then people need other body expressions other than the feeling body. And another part of the feeling body is movement.
Hmm.
So if I was angry, I might kind of go, Karen, and you can see my fist, or oh, and you can see my face and my eyes and my jaw. So my body is also expressing
Yes.
naturally, it's not just inside, it's outside. And then I can get in touch with that. And you could add now voice. Voice is body, it's larynx, it's breath, it's tongue, it's teeth, it's the vocal box. So it's like, you're really hungry. So now you have sound. And if you add movement and sound, you now have an expressive human being. So I can say, oh, you're so touching me so much. And my hands are going like this, and my eyes are moving forward, and my voice is getting tender and sweet, and my lips are getting pursed. Or I could be nervous, going, oh, and now I'm shaking a bit, and my eyes are getting different. Voice is coming out. Movement is coming out. I'm feeling it. I'm congruent. I'm connected to myself and expressing an authentic moment with you. And when we add those channels of experience, Arnie Mindell called those feeling, movement, voice through other channels, facial expression, then the person learns to be more like who they are in the
Mm.
world. And that's the healing thing, not to make it go away, but to live who I am, to be this person, scared person, angry person, brilliant person, out of touch person, etc.
You just said that's the healing thing is to be who I am.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, like, I just don't want the people listening to like miss on that. Like,
Yeah.
that's the healing thing. Because so often in our culture, we're taught that the healing thing is to change it, is to fix it, is to suppress it, is to make it go away, is to stop it, is to transform it, is it to like
Yeah.
all these other things. And this is what I'm saying. Like, you almost in a way, are saying, let's amplify it, let's really see it. And you tell that story about one of your clients who was it Frappuccinos, cappuccino. She didn't want to like give it up, and you were
Oh yeah.
yeah, and like you were saying, well, like and you were saying to her, like, imagine that, like, I'm trying to take that away from you. And
Yeah.
then she really started to fight you, and you just told her, like, make it bigger, make it bigger. And then what did she say at the end? Do you remember what her words were?
Yeah, I remember she was had body shame. That means that she hated her body.
Hmm.
97% of women have violent voices in their heads about their bodies every single day. That's not just one piece of research. That's like anybody who studies that will know. Violent, not like, hey, I don't look good in this shirt, meaning I'm ugly, I'm unattractive, no one will love me. Like, oh, that's pretty intense, right? No one will ever love me. That's a pretty intense thing to,
Hmm.
it makes me get pause because it's so strong. So makes me weep too because it's so painful I shouldn't pass it over because I normalize it by kind of going, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's like, think about that. Believing no one will love you. Holy shit, that's going to be not an easy life. That's a pretty painful life to live. You could try to compensate and make people love you, so to speak. But what a painful feeling to have. Okay, so she had that and she connected that to her size and wanted to be smaller. And she said, the reason why I'm not smaller, losing weight, dieting successfully, is because I go out and have these coffee drinks. Maybe it was a Starbucks or something, and I get whatever, all these extra goodies, whole milk and I don't remember caramel, whatever it wasn't. It was some huge amount of calories, 800 calories. I'm making it up. I can't remember. A huge number of calories in this, and sometimes she does it twice a day. And she drives 20 minutes each way to get it. Now, before we think, oh yeah, that's bad, let's stop her from doing that. That's not gonna be good for her health. It's too much sugar. That before we do that, listen to how big that motivation is. This something that says you're disgusting, you're terrible, don't do it, and she still does it. That's a pretty big force, right? If I say,
Hmm.
Karen, I will punish you, make you feel as worse as I can to stop you from doing something, and you continue to do it, that's a pretty big motivation. I might be interested in the power behind that. I mean, no matter how bad I make you feel, you will still persist. You could call that stupidity, but I call that power. Raw, what do we want to do with it? I'm not saying she should drink those drinks, but that alone is interesting. So I think she must really want those damn things,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
then the question is, what does she want? Well, she wants that coffee drink, but what's the experience? She wants a feeling. Right? She wants to drink. Why? Because it gives her an experience to have it. What's the experience? And that's a body experience. So I said, here's a cup. I think I had a big water bottle. I said, let's make believe this is your cappuccino. Can you feel how much you want it? You'll drive 40 minutes, 20 minutes back and forth, even against the self-hatred to get it. That's not a small energy. And you can feel it. I can tell you no, and you'll still do it. Yeah, okay. She grabbed it. I said, I want you to put that much energy into the bottle. She grabs the bottle. And I'm going to try to take the bottle away and say, that's bad. It's bad for you. You should stop doing it. It's making you ugly. It's making you fat, etc. That also lives in her, right? That's her experience. I want it. You shouldn't have it. Let's create the experience. So I'm pulling on it and she's pulling on it. I'm like, you can't have it. And she pulls a little bit. I'm like, come on. You got it. You're driving. You got a lot of power. So she's grabbing. Now we're fighting back and forth and we're laughing. And then pretty soon it gets more serious because like, she really wants this thing. I said, you can't have it. She says, I need it.
Mm.
I said, what do you need? And she says, my happiness. Oh, she wants happiness. Somebody else say, well, of course, but it could have been different. She could have said, I want peace. She could have said, I want freedom. She could have said, I wanted my power, my energy I feel with the drink. She could have said, I want the excitement. She could have said a lot of things that aren't happiness. So people think it's all about happiness. It's not. People are different.
Mm.
So she says, it's my happiness. And then the questions are, what's your life like? How come it's not happy? Well, I've wanted to do certain things in my life that I'm not doing.
Mm.
For those things, for her, that meant to go back to graduate school, that she gave up to be a good, quote unquote, a good mother, wife thing, creature.
Yeah.
She said I should give that up. You really want those things. Let's help you grab hold of that career that you want. That's your happiness. Oh, I don't know if I can do that. That's not going to be easy. You have to go against norms. You have to renegotiate your relationship with your husband. You have to renegotiate your relationship with your kids because you're going to be busy. You have to create a life that looks like it's your happiness. We can't just say, stop doing it then and start going for the schooling. She has to work something out.
Mm.
That's why it's manifesting in a place outside of the awareness in this strange thing that we don't understand. So now she may need a year or two. She did to figure out how to negotiate that. What are the inner norms, internalized sexism that says that she should be this kind of a mother? How she can negotiate her relationship with her husband? Will the relationship last? How's she going to stop making boundaries with her children? She has to learn a new way of being. That's good. All of those things are part of her empowerment. And then eventually she did actually go to law school and she was much happier. And the drinks drop out, not because she's fighting herself, but because she's grabbing something with that same intensity.
Ugh.
Yeah.
David, it's so brilliant and it's so beautiful. And I feel like I want everybody, can you just buy the Unshaming Way? Can you just go buy this book, please? It's
Thank
so
you.
fantastic. Because I know you can't serve everyone. I mean, this is why like you do this, 10-month training that you have coming up in February to start to train other people to be able to do that. And you're kind of picky. You keep the group small and stuff like that because there's only one of you, and the world needs way more of
There's a
unshaming
hundred
work.
people. I've trained 100 people to do unshaming work, and 40 more will go through the year-long 10-month program this year. And many of them are in continuing education mentorship, so they get supervision with me. Yeah,
It's
so
so incredible. And of course, I'm going to tell everybody how to like find that because it doesn't start till February and this is going to air in January. So people maybe, I don't know if it's full or not yet, but
we got 4 spots left.
four
So
spots. I wish I could have one of them. Oh my gosh.
you should come,
Oh my
come.
gosh. So
You'll
one
hate it, Karen. You'll hate it.
no, I wouldn't hate it. I think at some point,
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah.
because I'm trying to finish the first draft of my book this year. I'm
No,
trying.
no, finish. What's the book?
It's a memoir and it's about basically my mom's murder and my experience, my own journey like after that. And
So
it's
important.
yeah, it's a really
I'm so glad.
it's part of my life's work. Like it's just one of the things that I say like I don't want to regret not writing it. And so I really want to focus
This
on
is the
that.
thing. If you had various symptoms like IBS or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and somebody says, I could cure your IBS, whatever, whether it's David's method, whatever, and what they mean by that is those digestive symptoms would change. If we forget that you, as a more healed woman, write memoirs, not just relief from symptoms, but also write. You're a writer. If you're a writer, we want you, if you're a bird and we heal you, we hope that you can fly, right? If you're a fish, we hope you could swim. If you're a bat, we don't think, how do you open your eyes? We think, make sure your sonar radar system is working. If you're a person, people forget. Like when you're healed, what does Karen look like? Well, she doesn't have IBS. And what does she look like? Well, I don't know. She doesn't have IBS. That's not sufficient for me. That's agonizing for me. Then I think she is a writer person and a healer person and a podcast person with a certain voice. So when the healing has to think, how does she become more like that? So writing your memoir, that's not like separate from your healing. That's not like you have to heal so that you can do that. That's part of it. If I'm working with you, I'm thinking, how do I support your memoir writing? Well, I want help with my IBS. I am helping you with your IBS.
You're making me cry.
Yeah. And by the
You
way,
are.
when you talked about your mom, I was so struck by, well, the murder, which is such a violent, it's an ending to this in the sun of your life, the light of your life, but it's a violent end. So that's very important. I would never miss that part. And then, because she's a light, because she's a sun, there's the violence of that, the trauma and traumatizing violence, the horror of being 12, did you say? Yeah, being that young and having any mother, but this case, your mother and a specific mother, and it's not a mother who's an asshole, but a mother who's light, that whole experience, the feelings, the horror, the trauma, the emptiness, the griefs, all those things. And then over time, And then over time, your relationship with a certain kind of thing called sun and light, that relationship cannot end. You'll have to suffer the loss of it. You'll have to find it. You'll have to be it. Hmm. Yeah, over time. I'm not saying take a 12-year-old and saying, "Oh, the sun's inside of you." Like, even though there's a truth to that, that we don't want to dismiss the agony and experience and the trauma that you go through. But over time, we have to remember what your relationship, what happens with a relationship with the sun when it blots out? What is that person going to become then? They have a forever relationship with a sun and a potentiality of a sun and a relationship with a light which may or may not be there. That's a profound life that you'll have to get live through. And then over time, manifesting that light, not always, sometimes you'll feel dark or in the dark. I'm using those words metaphorically, whether that's depression or I don't know where I am or in pain or in shadow, but the light that's in you and what it does, because she hands that off to you. That's part of the beauty. I'm not making it again. I'm not saying to everybody, let's make that not a bad thing. Isn't that one? No, no, no. I'm not. That's not a bypass thing. It's a living thing that happens. Parents hand off, cultures hand off to people certain things. And then hopefully we take on what's ours, throw away what's not ours to take on, but pick up what is ours and make the most beauty that we can make out of it. Not only the hell I have to suffer through difficulties, but make the most beauty out of it. So that sunshine. And I see the sunshine in you because your energy and your kindness and your joy and the way your passion comes out. Oh, Dave, and you're bright, not just bright intellectually. You clearly have that because I hear your articulation, but there's a brightness in your excitement. You're full of that. So I
Oh
think
my God.
that's the mother. That's you and her and your relationship with her. You can't stop it. Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ah.
Oh
If you
my
need to
God.
edit that out, that's okay. Whatever. If it
I would
doesn't.
never edit it
Okay.
out.
Okay. Okay.
I would never edit it out. It's so
Okay. I'm just
beautiful. And
kind
what's
of
so
listening.
funny is, first of all, I'm obsessed with the sun. I'm obsessed with the sun. If you ask
Mhm.
me where, if you can be anywhere, I say I want to be on a beach, like I just want to be on the beach with the water and the sun hitting my body, with with a book. Like that is my happiest. Well, and animals, it has to be animals too. But like,
Beautiful.
yeah, the sun is one of my greatest things. And um, my people always tell me that I look exactly like my mother. And it can
Yeah.
be a little shocking for people who haven't seen me since I was a kid. When I come in, they just literally stop in their tracks. You can see it on their face, and they say, "Oh my God, you look exactly like your mom." And so,
Yeah.
just thank you so much for everything that you just said. That was totally unexpected and
Yeah.
just beautiful. And you know, it's fascinating. When I just want to back up 2 steps,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I know we
Yeah.
got to
Back up.
go in a little bit, but when you were
Yeah.
talking about that curiosity about the violence that lived in your brother,
Yeah.
my curiosity about the violence that lived in the man who killed her is
Yes.
one of the reasons why I do the work that I do, because I really believe that I was so curious about, like, how does a person kill somebody with their hands and their feet? Like, how does somebody kick and punch somebody to death? I'm like, what was going on with that person? And
Yes.
it was through my own curiosity um, that her murderer ended up hanging himself in prison.
Oh.
It's a whole long story, but the short of it is that that act gave me great, deep compassion for his children and his family. And
Mm.
that was the crack of light. That was the light, that Leonard Cohen, it's like, the cracks is where the light gets in. And it was that little crack of light of me thinking of him not so much just as like a monster and
Yes.
all the rage that I had and anger and everything that I had, but to see him as whatever word we want to use, deeply flawed, like a violent. And then it was like, well, what had to happen to him and his childhood that would allow that kind of thing, that kind, like that rage that must have lived
Yeah.
in him to be able to do that. And it made me think about one of the questions that I had written down for you about trauma in childhood. And I said, because I'll quote something that you said once I read the question, but it says, how is shame often internalized after traumatic experiences in childhood? And can
Yeah.
you talk about the importance of the witness? And you once said to me, we need someone to witness us in a non-judgmental, loving, and compassionate way. And
Yes.
you've talked about that lack of witness in your own childhood, but can you talk about the how we internalize shame after trauma in our own childhood?
Yeah. The most important part of the injury of trauma, the most important part of that is the perpetrator. I'm not talking about you as a hurt. The most important part of that story is this violent guy, that parent with the belt, that person who assaulted somebody on the street, or that teacher uh, or priest, or whoever, right? So that's important to the abuse story and the traumatizing story. But the most important part for the healing of that story is how it was witnessed, not the perpetrator. The healing, you need to know it was witnessed. That means who saw, who didn't see, who would you never tell because you know you would not get what you need from that. Those are really important. So so a woman I work with, I think I tell her story in my third book. Um, she was sexually violated by a clergy. That's why I mentioned the priest. But it wouldn't only have to be the Catholic Church, everybody. New Age spiritual communities, other spiritual communities, other organizations, IBMs, it's pervasive, but they're getting caught and should be. So
Hmm.
not to dismiss that. So she was uh, sexually violated as a young person, 12, 13. And by the way, I'm allowed to tell these stories. And and then she went to family and to clergy, and they suggested that this wasn't as bad as she thinks, and that she needs to learn to forgive, to not be angry at these people. Okay, now what happens when when she has problems later in her life? Maybe her body is contracting, maybe sex is painful for her. Wouldn't be shocking, her body would kind of be doing things.
Hmm.
Maybe she even has tumors. That could happen. Not all tumors are that, but people develop things like that.
Hmm.
Maybe she's scared. Maybe she just fawns all the time and is not really able to say, this is what's good for me. This is not, whatever develops there. When she has a problem later, she's, well, I have a problem. I'm scared all the time. And someone helps her, uh, may help her with her fear. But when she comes to a therapist, she doesn't say, I need help. I have a sexually violating history and story. She comes to a therapist saying, help me learn to forgive. I'm such an unforgiving person.
Mm.
Isn't that incredible? And if a
Mm.
boy was hurt and he got very angry as a kid and people said, you got to calm down, you're too dramatic, then he goes to a therapist and says, I got anger issues and I drink and I get angry and I have alcohol issues and anger issues. I can think of a guy who told me that. And
Hmm.
somebody was told when they had an early traumatic story, I don't know that that's true. Are you sure? They would never do that. And that person kind of thinks, comes and says, I doubt myself all the time. I have no self-confidence. I'm not sure what's true. I'm making things up. Can you help me with that? My lack of confidence. None of them tell an abuse story. And what story they tell is the story that they internalized. You make things up, somebody. You're angry, somebody. You're unforgiving, somebody. And that person then believes those parts. That's their understanding of what happened to them. And then they go try to be more forgiving or less angry or not make things up or less self-doubting. And the whole story and the injury and the experience becomes wrapped in a viewpoint. And that viewpoint is the viewpoint of those that they told or those that already are there, or a culture or a whole culture that says that doesn't happen so much. Come on, give me a break. That doesn't happen. So if the whole culture does that, the whole culture acts as a witness. So then people internalize that. So then people walk around thinking, why am I like this? Why do I have IBS? I should work. I should get IBS help. I should get depression help. I should get anger help. I should get forgiveness help. Forgiveness is a great thing, isn't it? And people walk around doing that. And the story, the trauma, the energies, the need for that anger, the intelligence of that self-doubt. I'm questioning everything. I should question everything, maybe. All of that goes away, and people just start mimicking the the viewpoint of the witness that they've now internalized. They don't trust themselves. You say something nasty to me, and it really hurts my feelings on a podcast in public. That's something to be public, and I think, why am I? I'm so dramatic. I can't believe I'm so sensitive that got hurt because I had a mother who doubted all my pain. So I don't kind of go, Karen, that's kind of intense. Can you edit that out? Actually, that's not okay with me. I'm, if you don't apologize, I'm leaving. I don't do that. I kind of go, gosh, David, you're 70 years old, one next year, and you've been a therapist for all these years, and you're that sensitive. Can't you get over that? That's shame talking, right? Why didn't I say, I don't care, I'm sensitive or not sensitive. I didn't like what happened. I didn't really do anything. Yeah, you're right. I make things up. I have a problem. I'm a screwed up person. Sometimes no. Why not just say, that doesn't feel good? Yeah. So we need some unshaming around trauma. People internalize that, and we know it's so enormous. You know that I write in the book, and this is a big story about the gymnastics
Mm,
doctor, Larry Nasser,
hmm.
United States gymnastics, women's gymnastics team physician.
Yes.
Michigan State was, I think it was at Michigan State University, um, also doctor there. And then he took all these girls, women, some of them were older, 18, 19, but a lot of them were,
Young.
called them girls, meaning they could have been 12, 13 years old.
Hmm.
And under the guise of medical help, violated these women.
Yep.
And eventually, some years ago, I can't remember now how many years ago now, 5, 6 years
Hmm.
ago, he brought to trial and convicted. When did people start reporting? There's a question I ask. When did, because I'm interested in, I'm not just interested in him. He's a bad dude. It's good. I'm glad they stopped him. He's in prison, etc. Great. Stop him. Perpetrator, abuser, no bypass. What's the story of these women? When did he start getting reported? 20, and if you look it up, 20 years before that, people started reporting events about him.
Mm.
What happened when they went to the DA, to the university presidents, to other people in the gymnastics, to their mothers, to their fathers, to the FBI? All those people were told, to other people in the university.
Hmm.
What happened? He's a doctor. I'm sure he's a doctor. I know what that means. That means nothing happened. I'm sure he wouldn't do that. So the denial happens like that. And then you get 20 years of history of that until 160 women came forward. 160.
Which is fucking unbelievable that it takes that
Yeah,
many people. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah. And then a woman DA, right? What's going on is a whole culture. It makes me want to scream. Makes me want to
yes.
holler. Marvin Gaye would say that 20 years went on, and what's happening? In all that time, he's continuing to abuse, but we have a whole culture, parents, doctors, physicians, FBI, DAs, police, who are saying, I don't really believe that you are violated and something should be done to stop that from
Hmm.
happening. I take you fucking seriously. That is in the culture. So you have a whole, that's not just to those 160 women, that's happening all over the place. That's why we need Me Too movements to say, and then here's an interesting part of that story that's really important to me. So the judge in that case, a woman judge, which is not unimportant, it's part of the story. Not surprisingly, she says any woman who wants to come forward and make a victim statement to the court can come. You
Hmm.
can make a public statement, right? Because I don't care if that takes days, part of the sentencing, but I'm going to give you a public forum. You don't have to come, but you can speak publicly. And many great gymnasts that people would recognize and other people came forward.
I
When
remember.
you listen to those victim statements, what are the statements? Very little about what Larry Nasser did. Almost only their stories are about who they told,
And who
the
didn't believe
witnesses,
him?
who they told.
Hmm.
Parents who were suicidal after they realized what happened to their precious daughters. It breaks my heart about those parents because they just didn't know better. They're like, oh, they believed the culture. Story after story, but the stories they're telling is who they told, who they didn't tell, who listened to them, how people responded. And people are kind of going, yeah, Larry Nassar, Larry Nassar, he's a bad dude. We should
Mhm.
put him up in front and center. But what should be really be front and center is the witnesses, like in the church. We should find those priests who were molesting children, mostly boys, and stop them, arrest them, send them out of the clergy, etc. But the bigger part of the story is the system, the religious, in that case, the Catholic system, I'm
Mhm.
calling it. I'm not saying Catholicism is bad or good. I'm
No.
saying the system, and the system that says, let's move that priest from here to there. Maybe it's not happening. Let's guard them and protect them. Let's tell children that they're making things up. That system is more dangerous than the priest. The system should be on trial. It can't be on trial in a court because we can't take the system to trial in that way, but in the court of the public. And as long as the public says, those priests, those priests, those priests, the story doesn't come out. The full story is who are the people who told, and what is the mentality that that system has in it that says we should deny, dismiss, and gaslight. Those are the basic things. Deny, dismiss, and gaslight those stories. That's the system that we as a culture need to put on trial, meaning to see through, to critique and see through and make sure we're not complicit by me gaslighting and denying and dismissing people's traumatic stories.
It's so true and it's so powerful and it's so necessary. And I love that you're bringing this up because it's leading to one of my, I could talk to you all day long, but I know I
Oh,
can
no,
only
it's a great
go.
conversation. Yeah.
But you were, one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, how does violence and social violence, like things like systemic racism, things like microaggressions, internalized oppression, those kinds of things, how do they exacerbate shame? Like these things in the culture that kind of do get glossed over or ignored, or these larger things, when we see it with, I mean, you've written several books. Your first one about like talking back to, because I think you actually do hold feet to the fire about these systems. Like when I look at all of your books, talking back to Dr. Phil, alternatives to mainstream psychology. So already knowing something different, we need something different.
Yes.
Revisioning activism, bringing depth, dialogue, and diversity to individual and social change. And then you can't judge a body by its cover. 17 women's stories of hunger, body shame, and redemption. So you are aware of these larger things. And
Yeah.
so the individuals who are listening to this and are a part of these systems, can you maybe help them understand how being a part of these systems might exacerbate their own shame?
Yeah. I mean, so when somebody hurts another person, hurting another person could be seeing you. If I see you as a woman and therefore I don't have to respect you the same way. I hate to even say that. I see you as a woman and think, well, you're not a man. I can disrespect you. I don't have to think you're intelligent, right? Et cetera. I can violate your boundaries. Why am I? That's really painful. I don't even want to say those words. Isn't that gross?
It,
That I can even think of those so easily. You know,
I understand.
I could think of those so I could. They're like I grew up with those, right? And more, right? The boom. I could just and this is what I think of you, and this is how attractive you are. I could go on to this whole litany of objectifications, right?
Yes.
So so those are assaults. Those are not shame. Then I can say, let me not say about you. Then if there's a woman over here, I say, you're not as smart. I don't want to listen. You're not an authority. Men are authorities. Men are doctors and presidents and whatever. So if I'm looking at that person, that's an assault. That's an abusive viewpoint that will injure that person. That's not shame. That's just nasty assault.
Hmm.
Shame is that when you go to somebody and say, I had this interview with David and I just felt treated disrespectfully. It was kind of hurtful. I had things to say and he acted like I wasn't talking. And that person says, David would not have done that.
Oh, yeah,
He's a
yeah.
great guy. Are you sure? Maybe you're just getting triggered. I think that's really your issue, right? Um, they're a witness. They're denying and gaslighting your experience you had. I assaulted you by treating you a certain way. That's an assault. It hurt, meaning assault, meaning it injures you. My
Yes.
attitude comes out, it injures you. And then your husband's there, and I talk to him, and I look at him, and I ignore you. That means that's a message to you. It's an assault. I'm treating you a certain way, and it hurts. It'll hurt your system. And then you go to someone and say, no, 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 whatever, or you're making it up, or you're being dramatic, or that's really your shit, or you should work on that. That's your
Oh my
therapeutic,
God.
right? So so the witness itself in that scene, if you believe that, then you go to therapy thinking, I'm overly sensitive. Can you help me with my sensitivity?
I've been called too sensitive my whole life.
Yeah. You don't go to therapy thinking, sexism is fucking rampant and it's infuriating me. I don't know, maybe I should write three more books about how disgusting it is the way people treat women. You don't think of doing that. So the way the culture catches those things is it. So the denial and dismissal. So if there's a culture that says racism's over, we have a black president, we had a black president, um, this doesn't exist anymore. We don't need affirmative action. Maybe affirmative action is good or bad. We can argue about that, but we don't need it. Is a different thing, right? Is it the best solution? We can argue about that to the problem. But anything that says this assault doesn't exist, racism meaning an assault on a person based on the color of their skin, treating them less valuable, dehumanizing way. If something says that's not really happening, that's really you. Maybe you deserve it. Maybe people of color really are these terrible things. Once that happens, shame enters, and the person no longer has a natural response to the racial violence that's happening. They think, what's wrong with me? I'm a screwed up person.
Mm.
And the culture looks at them that way. Culture looks at them as a defective human being. So the whole culture is responsible, like with the Larry Nassar, to not only be anti-racist, that's good, but to see it when it's happening. So it's my responsibility. So I didn't treat you in a sexist way, I hope. But if it happens, and yeah, I didn't do it, I didn't treat you that way, it's my responsibility to kind of go, that's gross. You were treated that way as a woman. I saw that. I noticed that. Of course you're pissed off. Give me a break. They would never have done that to me as a man. Now I'm witnessing those things, and that doesn't enter. And I want to say one thing about internalized depression, because once that enters, so now you treat me like a certain way as a Jewish person. Let's say, oh yeah, Jews, they're uptight, greedy, money grubbing people. Lots of people have a vision of Jews like that. And we want to run the world and take over the banks and take over the industries because we're power and money hungry. That's a stereotype of Jews that's in the culture.
Hmm.
People, even in Disney portray us counting money with like big noses and croupier hats, right? So it's not like a rare thing. It's a viewpoint. So, um, so now that goes in. So now when I go to charge a person a fee for my training, I think, whoa, that's a lot of money. Oh, maybe I'm being too this, maybe I'm being too greedy. Maybe I shouldn't ask for so much. That internalization,
Mm.
right? Now I've internalized anti-Semitism.
Mm.
Geez, I'm so greedy because I'm so money hungry. That's not fair. I should never do that. Why can't I just make things more cheap and more free for people? Maybe I should do that, but I'm not doing it because I have a value and ethics about caring for people. I'm doing it because I think I'm a bad, disgusting, greedy, money grubbing Jew.
Oh,
Sorry, Jewish people, but that's inside of me,
sure.
right? So that lives inside of me. That's a big thing. Now, when that goes on, and I don't know about that, I don't know about internalized anti-Semitism. You don't know about internalized sexism. I'm taking up too much space. I should be quiet. I should listen to men. I shouldn't interrupt them. I should be smaller, right? If you don't know about that, nobody's going to witness it. And it just goes on as an inner abuse scene. So internalized depression, let me see if I can say it clearly. Internalized depression, I shouldn't act this way. I'm too angry as a black person. I'm taking too much space as a woman. I'm too greedy as a Jewish person. Those ideas, when they're not witnessed, they just keep going on by themselves. And I think, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I feel so bad. I feel so depressed. The internalized depression is not seen. At least if I say, as a woman, you should take up very little space. Men should rule the world. At least you can kind of go, you're an asshole,
I go fuck
right?
yourself, right?
Or you can say, I agree with you, or whatever. But at least you can respond to me. But if it's inside, you may not see it, and nobody may see it. And then it's just going on all by itself.
Mm.
Seen. So we very rarely talk about it. I'm not weaving the dialogue about this. I'm sorry about that. But what we need to do is out those voices inside so people hear them. We should
Yes.
all sit around. All women should sit around and say, this is the voices in my head. You're a bee. You're ugly. You're disgusting. You're too loud. You're too this. We should have those out so we all hear them because otherwise we're not witnessing them. They're inside. And if they're inside, we believe it. Like,
Yes.
I really am fat though, aren't I? And I really, it's like, not the, yes, you may be big, but the way you're talking about it is not that way. The way you're talking about it is a sexist assault on your system. Anyway, you can clarify that maybe. I feel like I'm not being as
No,
clear.
no. I
Yeah,
mean, I do. I mean, because also the way that my brain interprets that is when it's not said out loud. And sometimes it's not said out loud because we don't even know it lives in us. We don't even know
yeah,
it's in there. But if we don't say it out loud, then nobody can say tell me more or question it or
yeah.
it gets to just kind of live as a truth and it doesn't
Mhm.
get to be witnessed by somebody who can either say like something to either refute it or to give a different point of view because if shame is a point of view then love is a point of view.
Beautiful. Yeah. I worked with a woman, it's in stories in my new book, The Unshaming Way.
Yeah, this
And
this beautiful book that I love
yeah,
so
that's
much.
beautiful book. Thank you. She's a Native American woman. And she said, inside of me, I think bad thoughts about how I look. And I said, tell me the thoughts. What do you mean? Let's imagine I'm you, your body, your hair, your nose, your face, etc. Tell me what isn't lives inside of you. Look at me, so to speak, yourself in the mirror through those eyes. I don't like your nose. I don't like the texture of your skin. I don't like the way your hair is and it's so straight and it doesn't have waves. Keep going. Why should I keep going? Let's hear it. Let's hear otherwise we don't know. And then she's like getting moved because she's saying things out loud she may never even have said before to anybody. And now you're hearing it kind of going, whoa. And
Oh,
then I said to her, after I learn all those, I said, I want you to sit, stay in your body, and I'm going to say some of those things to you. I want you to feel what it's like to be spoken to like that. Take your time, relax, stay in your body. Don't even fight it. Just notice what happens. Notice what it's like to be treated this way. And I'm like, I don't like your nose. And I stop. Can you feel it? What
but
happens inside? I want you to feel, because otherwise it's like, yeah, of course I don't feel it. Like, feel what it's like because you've brought this inside. So now we out that inner, we're witnessing it, right? We're witnessing the words and what it's like to be treated that way. Now she'll know, whoa, this feels awful. Don't work on your depression. Of course you're depressed. That's what you're saying. You're saying you want to shrink and fall away and die when I say those words to you. Exactly. Yeah, of course you think maybe I don't want to live. That's how you respond when somebody talks to you like that on a regular basis. Yeah.
and when the calls are coming from inside the house, you don't think it, you normalize it.
Yeah.
You normalize it. I mean, even when you were just saying those things, like I felt my whole chest just kind of concave, like, oh my God. And I think so many of us do walk around with these things. And this is why, like, I feel like your work, honestly, is some of the most important and honest and beautiful and
Thank you.
powerful. Like when I did your speaking of like never saying a thing out loud before, when I did your workshop on death, and one of the questions I immediately reached out to my best friend and I was telling her and I was saying like what would most like a lot of people call me KK instead of Karen, but I was like, okay, but what would dead KK do? Like what would dead Karen do? Like, and I still ask myself this question, like from your workshop, and I was like, what would dead Karen do? And I remember, it's too long to talk about here. I would love to have you come back another time, but like, so we could talk some more. But like, I just remember you inviting us and like, and you were like, let it take a form. And I became like a fire breathing dragon. And you're like, and what would like dead you do? And I was like, and I remember we did a little back and forth, and I never raised my hand in groups. But
Oh, oh,
I did. And I said, all right, I'm gonna be vulnerable. I'm gonna be brave. I'm gonna raise my hand. And I was like crying and you're like, what would you do? And I was like, I would burn this motherfucker to the ground. And I said, I would kill you. I would
Yeah.
kill you.
Yeah.
And you just like we had like this moment because so much of my life after that happened to my mother has been about nonviolence. I became a yoga teacher. The whole foundation of
Yeah.
yoga is ahimsa, nonviolence. I've been vegan for 23 years. I don't want to hurt anybody or anything.
Beautiful. So
But
glad.
there's a part of me though that
Yeah.
is very like, whew, that's
Yeah.
like I will
Mm.
never, I'm not going to kill anybody. But
Yeah.
that energy that I probably suppress in some ways.
Yeah. Until you know what to do with it other than literally kill a person. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's part of the story. I mean, part of that story with your mom that you have to then, you don't have to, but your life, if it wants to unfold past a certain spot, flower into the deepest you, is going to have to figure out what do I do with that violence? Making sure I don't hurt certain people the way my mother was hurt, great. Making sure you don't hurt yourself with that, great.
sure.
And then what will I do with it? You can say, well, I'll get rid of it. That's not going to be a sustainable solution. That's not a sustainable peace. A sustainable peace has to make peace with the violence. That means not let it just do other things, but has to find out how do I have a relationship? If I want to have nonviolence with violence, can't say I have nonviolence except for violence I want to kill and destroy. That's not a complete nonviolence. A complete nonviolence has to say, how do I be nonviolent towards violence? That doesn't mean say it's okay. I have to figure out how to. I'm not about saying go ahead and do it. I'm not saying that. What kind of relationship do I have with violence that's not about killing it? Or is it about finding the killer in me? What do I have to do with this energy? Otherwise, it goes free and we have a violent planet. And then if some people say, I don't want to be violent at all, I'd say that's great. But some people need to say, I'm going to take some of that on and do something with it other than make violation. I'm going to stand
Yes.
up to people. I'm going to protect my people.
A
I'm going to
hundred
make sure I
percent.
finish a book and nothing's going to stop me. I don't know what it is, but you may need it for something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're violent towards the violence. Again, I'm not being new agey. Be nice to it. Everyone's loving. I'm not, no, I'm not naive like that. But you have to figure out what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does, I think in my own ways, and nobody's ever asked me that in that particular way. And I think I do, in some ways it is I don't know. I think it's one of my superpowers that it fuels me in some ways. I
Yeah.
am a voice for the voiceless. I do like kind of use it and I try to use it in a non-destructive way. And then
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder like maybe there's like this how the IBS is threaded in there. And this
Yeah.
is a conversation, this is
Yeah.
not a call about me, so we could have a
Yeah.
conversation another time. But and this is what I love about you, like the way that you just are, and the way that your mind works, and the way that you see people and pick up on things that other people don't pick up. I think it's one of your superpowers. And there's a part of me that you know, I- I can't, I'm madly in love. I talked about dragons. Like I'm madly in love with this
Mm.
idea of wizards and magic and
Mm.
like Merlin and all this stuff. And you, to me, have a kind of a magical quality in that way. I
Thank
see
you.
an alchemist in you. I see
Mm.
a magician in you. If you does it
Mhm.
is that landing what I'm saying to you? Is it making sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily use those exact words, but I know what you're referring to.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
you're an alchemizer in some ways.
yeah. It's alchemy.
Yeah.
Alchemy says there's dross, people shit, right? And that if you cook it, right? An alchemist took a pot and
Mhm.
they put stuff that was not valuable, lead, things that weren't gold. They called it dross. And then they cooked it, they put a lid on it and they cooked it up. And then they cooked it up and it turned into gold. So there's something golden. It was a spiritual process.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
something golden in the shit. And
Yes.
then we have to do a cooking. So what I do is I say, there's the stutter. Let's put the stutter in the pot. Let's heat it up so that it stutters more. And let's see if there's gold in there. Yeah,
I a
that's
hundred
alchemy.
percent
Yeah.
yes, I 100% agree with you, and I really feel like that too. And it leads me back to poem, and we can maybe end on this.
Oh yeah, let's end on a poetry. I like that.
Yeah, well, this is from your book. This is the Galway Kennels poem because
Oh yeah, go away.
I love Saint Francis. He was the patron saint of animals, which is beloved to my
Yeah.
heart. And the blessing of the animals every year is on my birthday, so I love that. And I don't think that's a mistake. So this is the poem Saint Francis in the Sow, and
Mhm.
I think of you every time I obviously read this. It says, "The bud
Mhm.
stands for all things, even for those things that don't flower. For
Mhm.
everything flowers from within of self-blessing. Though sometimes it is necessary to reteach a thing its loveliness, to put a hand on its brow of the flower and retell it in words and in touch. It is lovely until flowers again from within of self-blessing."
Mhm.
And then you went on to say, when we unshame, we are reteaching precious, restored parts of ourselves that they are lovely. When we self-bless, we bloom.
Mhm. I wrote that. Hey, that's pretty good.
You wrote that. You did. Your book is beautiful, and I will
Mm.
put this down there. My last question is there anything I didn't ask or bring up that you wish I did?
No, that we went places I didn't know we were going to go, and I think it's better than I could have designed it, as always.
So David,
Life is smarter than me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something smarter than us was leading the
Luckily,
I
I'm
know
a pretty limited human being, but life has really got a lot of intelligence in it. So,
it does. So, folks, David has an ongoing monthly membership. He also has a relationship membership with his sweetie Lisa, who is
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, Lisa.
You offer some master classes. You have some free resources on your website, davidbedrick.com. And you have this 10-month training that's starting in February. You only have 4 spots left.
Yeah.
And you offer so much to the world. So thank you so much for being you. Thank you for sharing this time with me and my listeners. I appreciate you. I know we've never met, but I do love you. And
Love you
I
too, Karen.
thank you for spending this time with me.
Mm, beautiful.
And
Beautiful. Big hugs. My finger wants to hug you too. It matches your shirt. So.
all right, so everybody, thank you so much for spending this time with us. As I always say, wherever you go, may you leave yourself and the animals and the place and the people and the environment better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you and your presence and your love be a blessing. Bye.
Beautiful. Great job.